The Valari Dominion had ruled the Orion Spur for 12,000 years, and in all that time, no species had ever dared to refuse their demands. High Arbiter Thiessen Verkith stood on the command deck of the Eternal Supremacy, his four eyes fixed on the blue world, rotating slowly below him. Earth. It was a beautiful planet. He had to admit the humans had done well for themselves. Spreading across 100 worlds in just 3 centuries of interstellar travel. But beauty meant nothing to the Dominion power, was all that mattered. And these humans had none. High Arbiter, his aide Krell announced, bowing low. The human ambassador has responded to our tribute demands. Thiessen turned slowly, his ceremonial robe sweeping across the polished floor. And what did the primitive creature say? Krell hesitated, and that hesitation made Thiessen's eyes narrow. Speak, he commanded. The ambassador. Krell swallowed nervously. She laughed, High Arbiter, for a long moment. Thiessen said nothing. 12,000 years. 12,000 years of absolute dominance over this region of space. 100 conquered species paying tribute to the Dominion, and this young, foolish species had the audacity to laugh. Show me. Thiessen ordered. The holographic recording flickered to life before him. A human female stood in the center of the image, wearing a simple black suit that seemed almost insulting in its plainness. Behind her, other humans sat at a curved table, their faces showing no fear at all. Let me make sure I understand, the woman said, her voice carrying the strange melodic quality of human speech. You want us to hand over 30% of our agricultural output, allow your inspectors on all our worlds, and provide workers for your mining operations. The Valori diplomat in the recording nodded his head. These are the standard terms for new species entering the Dominion's protection. The woman looked at her colleagues. Then she laughed, not a polite chuckle, but a full, genuine laugh that made her shoulders shake. The answer is no, she said when she had composed herself. Not just no, but absolutely not. And if you send another one of these ridiculous demands, we will use it for toilet paper. Do you understand? The recording ended. Thiessen stood in silence for a full minute. His aide Krell waited, trembling slightly. Krell, Thiessen finally said, his voice dangerously calm. How many humans live on the colony world Kepler 442b? Approximately 18 million. High Arbiter, order the third fleet to that location. Krell's eyes widened. High Arbiter, I mean to teach these creatures a lesson they will never forget, Thiessen interrupted. When the other species of this galaxy see what happens to those who refuse the Dominion, they will remember why they pay tribute. They will remember why they bow. The third fleet arrived at Kepler 442b 3 days later. The colony had no real defenses. It was a farming world, covered in vast fields of grain and vegetables that fed a dozen other human settlements. Families lived in small towns scattered across the green continents. Children played in schoolyards. Farmers tended their crops. None of them knew what was coming. Bombardment lasted 6 hours. When it was over, nothing remained. 18 million humans. Men, women, children, the elderly, the sick, the innocent, all of them reduced to ash. And the Mori Thiessen watched the final reports with satisfaction. Send a message to the human government, he ordered. Inform them that this was a demonstration of Dominion power. Tell them they have 1 week to accept our terms, or another world will burn. He expected panic. He expected desperate pleas for mercy. He expected the humans to do what every other species had done when faced with the overwhelming might of the Valori Dominion. What he received instead was something that would haunt him for the rest of his very short life. The response came exactly 24 hours later. It was not a surrender. It was not a plea for negotiation. It was a single transmission, sent on all frequencies, broadcast openly for anyone in the galaxy to hear. The same woman from before appeared in the hologram, Ambassador Catherine Wells, but she was different now. The Amusement was gone from her face. Her eyes were hard and cold. Like the space between stars, to the Valori Dominion, she said. Her voice steady and sharp. The United Terran Federation has received your message. We have counted our dead, 80 million souls, including my own daughter and her children. My grandchildren. She paused, and in that pause, Thiessen felt something he had not felt in centuries, a tiny seed of doubt. You believe this will make us submit. Ambassador Wells continued. You believe we will bow and scrape and beg for mercy. You do not understand what you have done. She leaned forward. Slightly, we accept your declaration of war. The transmission cut to a data file. Atheans watched in confusion as images began to flash across the screen. Strange images from human history, something called the Siege of Stalingrad, where humans had eaten rats and leather and each other rather than surrender their city. Something called the Vietnam War, where a tiny nation had fought the most powerful country on their planet for decades and refused to break. Something called World War II, where humans had split the atom itself and used it to burn cities to the ground. 60 million humans had died in that single conflict. They had done that to each other. Krell was making a strange sound beside him, a whimpering, keening noise. High Arbiter, he whispered. These records, this is what they do to their own kind? Thiessen did not answer. He was staring at images of something called the Eastern Front, humans freezing in snow, starving, dying by the millions, and still fighting, still advancing, still refusing to stop. The data file ended. Ambassador Wells reappeared. You have made a terrible mistake, she said. We did not want war. We wanted to explore the stars, make friends, build something beautiful. But you took that choice away from us when you murdered 18 million innocent people. Her eyes seemed to look directly at Thiessen. We are coming for you, she said. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon, and when we arrive, you will understand why every predator on our world learned to fear us. You will understand why we stand at the top of our food chain. You will understand why the darkness itself is afraid of humanity. The transmission ended with 7 simple words that would become famous across the entire galaxy. We accept your declaration of war. Sincerely, Thiessen stood frozen on his command deck for the first time in his long life. The High Arbiter of the Valori Dominion did not know what to do. His aide Krell spoke in a trembling voice. High Arbiter, what are your orders? Thiessen had no answer. He simply stared at the empty space where the transmission had been and wondered if he had just made the worst mistake in the history of his species. The message spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass within hours. Every species with access to interstellar communications had seen the human transmission within days. Scholars and military experts from 1,000 worlds were analyzing the strange data files the humans had attached to their declaration of war. Ambassador Yilthrix of the Consciousness Collective was one of the first to complete a full analysis. The Collective was an ancient species, older even than the Valori, and they had survived by understanding the minds of others. But as Yilthrix reviewed the human files, he felt something he had not experienced in 3,000 years. Fear. He called an emergency meeting of the Collective Council, and his fellow ambassadors gathered in the great hall of their home world to hear his report. I must warn you, Yilthrix began, his voice echoing through the chamber. What I am about to share will disturb you deeply. He activated the holographic display. Let us begin with the basics of human biology. Images of humans appeared, their soft bodies looking almost comically fragile compared to the armored forms of most spacefaring species. At first glance, they appear weak, Yilthrix continued. No natural weapons, no armor, no venom. Relatively slow, relatively small. But these observations miss the truth of what humans are. He changed the display to show a human running. Humans are persistence predators. On their home world, they did not hunt by being faster or stronger than their prey. They hunted by following their prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal simply collapsed from exhaustion. Humans kept going when other creatures stopped. They kept running when other creatures died. Murmurs rippled through the council. Their bodies are remarkably resilient. Yelthrix continued. They can survive the loss of limbs. They can function with damaged organs. They heal from wounds that would kill most species. Their immune systems adapt to new threats with terrifying speed. He paused. But their bodies are not what makes them dangerous. The display changed again, showing images of human soldiers in various historical conflicts. Humans have a chemical in their bodies called adrenaline. When they are frightened or angry, this chemical floods their system. It makes them faster, stronger, and almost immune to pain. In this state, humans have been documented lifting vehicles off trapped children, fighting through injuries that should have killed them, and performing feats of strength that should be physically impossible. The council members shifted uncomfortably. There is more, Yelthrix said. Humans do not need much sleep. They can function on half the rest that most species require. And they can push themselves without sleep for days when necessary. They simply refuse to stop. He turned off the display. I have reviewed their history in detail, and I have reached a conclusion that I want each of you to consider carefully. The chamber fell silent. Humans are not a species that develop violence as a survival trait, Yelthrix said slowly. They are violence that developed a species around it. The silence stretched finally. Elder Kareth spoke. Surely you exaggerate. Ambassador, they are simply one more aggressive species. The galaxy has seen many such species rise and fall, has it? Yelthrix responded. Consider this. In just one of their conflicts, a war they called World War II, over 60 million humans died. And they fought that war against themselves. He let that sink in. They have philosophers who study war as an art form. They have generals who are remembered as heroes for finding creative ways to kill millions. They write poetry about battle. They compose music to celebrate slaughter. They give medals to their most efficient killers. Yelthrix shook his head slowly. Other species fight wars for resources or territory or survival. Humans fight wars for ideas, for revenge, for honor, for concepts that exist only in their minds. And they will die in vast numbers for these abstractions without hesitation. What do you recommend? Elder Kareth asked. I recommend we stay far away from this conflict, Yelthrix replied. And I recommend we send a warning to the Valori, though I suspect they will not listen. They did not listen. High Arbiter Thesan dismissed the collective's warnings as the cowardice of an ancient and declining species. He ordered his fleets to crush the human worlds quickly, before the creatures could organize a proper defense. It was the second worst mistake of his life. The first, reports from the front lines, confused the Valori commanders' human ships that should have been destroyed kept fighting, their engines dead, their weapons failing, their hulls breached and burning. The human crews continued to fire, continued to resist, continued to do damage until the very last moment. They are not surrendering, Admiral Vex reported to Thesan, his voice carrying a note of bewilderment. Even when their ships are crippled, they ram our vessels. They fire escape pods loaded with explosives. They die spitting at us. Ground combat was worse on the colony world of New Brisbane. A single regiment of Valori warriors faced a human militia of farmers and shopkeepers. The Valori expected an easy victory. Instead, the humans fought from every building, every street, every hole in the ground. They created weapons from farming equipment. They dug tunnels and set traps. They attacked at night, when the Valori could not see well, appearing from shadows like ghosts and vanishing before the soldiers could respond. The regiment lost 40% of its strength taking a single small town. They fight like nothing we have ever seen, Regimental Commander reported, his voice shaking. They do not follow the rules of war. They do not care about glory or honor. They only care about hurting us, killing us, making us bleed. Across the galaxy, other species began to take notice. The merchant guilds quietly started negotiating trade agreements with human representatives, the void wanderers. Those ancient nomads who had refused to ally with any power for 10,000 years sent a delegation to Earth. Even the mysterious architects, who had not spoken to any species in living memory, transmitted a single message to the human government. We are watching with interest. On the Valori homeworld, the mood shifted from confidence to concern. The war was only 3 months old, but already the Dominion was facing problems it had never encountered before. Human hackers had penetrated Valori communication networks, spreading chaos and confusion. Human traitors had convinced 3 client species to quietly stop paying tribute. Human propaganda had reached the slave populations on a dozen worlds, speaking of freedom and resistance. And worst of all, the human military was learning. Each battle, they adapted. Each defeat, they analyzed. They were not fighting like a young species should fight. They were fighting like predators, patient and relentless, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. High Arbiter Thyssen received a private briefing from his intelligence chief. The humans have a phrase, the chief said, his voice barely above a whisper. Total war. It means a war where the entire population participates, where every resource is devoted to victory, where there is no separation between military and civilian. And Thyssen demanded, they have begun to mobilize. High Arbiter, truly mobilize. Factories that made vehicles now make weapons. Schools teach children to identify Valori weak points. Their elderly are volunteering for suicide missions. The chief hesitated. They are treating this war as a matter of survival, of extinction. They intend to fight until either we are destroyed or they are. There is no middle ground for them. No negotiated peace. No compromise. Thyssen stared at his intelligence chief. That is madness, he said finally. Yes, High Arbiter, the chief agreed. But it is a very dangerous kind of madness. And we created it when we killed 18 million of their people. For the second time in recent memory, Thyssen had no response. 6 months into the war, the Valori had learned many new words. Guerrilla warfare, when enemies refused to fight openly and instead struck from shadows, then vanished before they could be caught. Improvised explosive, when everyday objects became weapons of death, hidden in roads, buildings, even corpses. Scorched earth, when humans destroyed their own cities, their own farms, their own resources, rather than let the Valori use them. And the worst word of all, Total War. Admiral Vex stood before High Arbiter Thyssen, delivering the monthly casualty report. His hands trembled as he spoke. We have lost 400,000 warriors. High Arbiter Thyssen stared at him. In 1 month? Yes, and that number is increasing. The humans are. They are adapting faster than we can respond. Each tactic we develop, they counter within days. Each weakness we exploit, they shore up within hours. We have better technology, Thyssen insisted. Better ships, better weapons? Yes, Vex agreed. But they fight with a desperation we cannot match. They throw themselves into battles they cannot win, and somehow they win them anyway. He pulled up a tactical display. This is Villa Prime, our forward operating base in the Theta sector. The display showed a Valori military installation, one of the largest in the region. Yesterday, a single human soldier infiltrated this base. Thyssen leaned forward. One soldier? One soldier. He had survived an orbital strike. 2 weeks earlier, we had bombarded his position from space, killed his entire unit, left nothing but rubble and radiation. But he survived. Vex's voice grew quieter. He crawled through the wasteland for 14 days. High Arbiter, he had lost 3 limbs. His body was filled with radiation sickness. that should have killed him within hours. But he kept moving, kept crawling toward our base. "That is impossible," Thiessen said. "I have the footage," Vex replied. "Would you like to see it?" He activated the recording. A security camera showed a corridor inside the Vila. Prime Base 2 Valori guards stood at a checkpoint, bored and relaxed. Then something appeared at the end of the hall and had once been a human now. It was barely recognizable as a living creature. Its left arm was gone. Its legs were twisted and useless. Half its face was burned away. It pulled itself along the floor with its one remaining arm, leaving a trail of blood behind it and in its teeth. It carried a knife. The guards stared in shock. They had never seen anything like this. They hesitated, just for a moment, trying to understand what they were looking at. That hesitation cost them their lives. The creature that had been a human somehow moved faster, closing the distance in seconds. The knife flashed. One guard fell, then the other. Then the human collapsed. Finally, Thiessen watched the footage in silence. Who was he? He finally asked. "Sergeant Thomas Chun," Vex replied. "A farmer before the war. He had no special training, no military background. He was just a man who refused to die until he had killed as many of us as possible." "One man," Thiessen murmured. "One man. High Arbiter. Now imagine what they're trained. Soldiers are capable of." He did not have to imagine for long. Reports began flooding in from across the front lines. Human special forces had penetrated deep into Valori territory. They did not wear uniforms. They did not follow rules. They simply appeared, killed, and disappeared. The Valori commanders began calling them the monsters on the world of Kethris. A team of 7 humans destroyed an entire supply depot, killing 300 guards and vanishing into the wilderness on the moon of Desser. 4 humans infiltrated a communication center, captured the senior staff, and broadcast their interrogation across the entire Dominion network before escaping and on the Valori colony of New Hope. A single human woman named Sarah Chun walked into the capital city with a bomb strapped to her chest. She was the sister of Thomas Chun, the man who had crawled for 14 days. She detonated herself in the middle of the Valori military headquarters, killing the planetary governor and his entire staff. But she did not simply die before she triggered the bomb. She spoke into a camera. "My brother died crawling toward you," she said. "I die walking. The next will come running. And after that, there will be too many to count. You killed 18 million of us. We have not forgotten. We will never forget. We are coming." The message spread across the galaxy. Other species watched with a mixture of horror and awe. The Valori, the mighty Valori, were afraid. High Arbiter Thiessen called an emergency meeting of his war council. "We need more troops," Admiral Vex argued. "Conscript from the client species. Expand our forces." "We cannot," the intelligence chief replied. "The client species are already restless. If we push them harder, they may revolt." "Then negotiate," suggested Elder Korath, who had been brought in as an advisor. "Offer the humans a peace treaty. Return some of their territory." "They will not accept," Thiessen said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "I have studied them now," the High Arbiter continued. "I have read their history, their literature, their philosophy. They have a concept they call blood debt. When you harm them, they must harm you in return. Equal measure for equal measure." He stood and walked to the window, staring out at the stars. "We killed 18 million of them. They will not stop until they have taken 18 million of us. It is not about territory or resources or power. It is about balance, about justice as they understand it." "That is barbaric," Elder Korath protested. "Yes," Thiessen agreed. "But it is also terrifyingly consistent. Every human I have studied, every record I have reviewed, shows the same pattern. They never forget. They never forgive. They never stop. He turned back to face his council. We thought we were teaching them a lesson, but they are teaching us instead. They are teaching us what it means to fight a species that has spent its entire existence killing everything around it, including each other. The council sat in stunned silence. What do we do? Vex finally Eskedthison looked at his admiral, his intelligence chief, his advisor, the leaders of the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known, and he spoke 3 words that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. I do not know. That night, alone in his chambers, Thiessen reviewed the latest reports human fleets were pushing deeper into Valorie's space. Human agents were fomenting rebellion on client worlds. Human hackers were exposing Valorie's secrets to the entire galaxy, and everywhere. The monsters were coming. He thought about the image of Thomas Chun, crawling through radioactive wasteland with a knife in his teeth. He thought about Sarah Chun, walking calmly to her death with a smile on her face. He thought about the 18 million dead on Kepler 442b. And he finally understood the truth. He had not attacked a weak species. He finally understood the truth. He had not attacked a weak species. Heveskos had poked a sleeping predator, and now that predator was awake. And it was hungry, and it would not rest until it had fed. 2 years into the war, the Valori Dominion was dying not from lack of resources, for the Dominion controlled 100 wealthy worlds, not from lack of soldiers, for billions of Valori remained ready to fight. The Dominion was dying because the humans had turned the war into something far worse than a military conflict. They had made it personal. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship Vengeance, watching as her fleet emerged from hyperspace above the Valori world of Thesser Prime. Thesser Prime was the heart of the Dominion's industrial capacity, a world of vast factories and shipyards that had built the fleet now crumbling before human advance. And in orbit around Thesser Prime, the remnants of the Valori Third Fleet waited, the same Third Fleet that had destroyed Kepler 442b, the same ships that had murdered 18 million humans, including Sarah's son, daughter-in-law, and 3 grandchildren. She had waited 2 years for this moment. All ships, she ordered, her voice steady and cold, engage. The battle lasted 8 hours. The Valori fought with the courage of desperation, knowing that defeat meant the end of everything they had built. But the humans fought with something beyond courage. They fought with hate. When the firing stopped, not a single Valori ship remained intact. Admiral Chun walked through the wreckage afterward, floating in a shuttle through the debris field that had once been the pride of the Dominion. She found the command module of the Third Fleet's flagship, still pressurized, still containing survivors. She ordered her Marines to cut through the hull inside. They found Admiral Kessex, the Valori officer who had personally given the order to bombard Kepler 442b. He was wounded but alive. Admiral Chun, he said, attempting dignity even in defeat. I surrender myself and my crew to your custody. We claim protection under the Articles of War. Chun looked at him for a long moment. The Articles of War apply to civilized species, she replied. You gave up that protection when you murdered my grandchildren. She turned to her Marines. Space the crew. All of them? The Marine captain asked. All of them. Kessex's 4 eyes went wide with horror. You cannot do this. This is murder. You are no better than you? Chun interrupted. No, I am exactly as bad as you. You created me, Admiral. You made me into this when you killed everyone I loved. So thank you for that. Truly. She leaned close to him. I want you to know something before you die. We have been keeping count. 18 million. That is how many you killed on Kepler 442b as of this battle. Our total Valori casualties stand at 14.2 million. We have 3.8 million left to go. And we will not stop until we reach our number. The airlocks opened. the screaming did not last long across the galaxy. Other species watched the war with growing unease. The merchant guilds had initially hoped to profit from the conflict, selling supplies to both sides, but the humans had made clear that any species caught trading with the Valori would face consequences. There are no neutrals in this war, the Terran Federation declared. You are either with us or against us. Choose carefully. Most species chose wisely. The consciousness collective offered formal alliance to humanity, the Void Wanderers, who had not fought alongside anyone in 10,000 years, sent a fleet to join the human advance. Even the mysterious architects broke their long silence to provide intelligence on Valori defenses, but the most devastating blow to the Dominion came from within. Human hackers had spent months infiltrating Valori networks. They found the records of Kepler 442b, the internal communications showing that High Arbiter Thiessen had known the colony was defenseless, had known it was filled with families and children, and had ordered its destruction anyway as a demonstration. They broadcast these records to every world in the Dominion. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The slave species of the Dominion had endured centuries of oppression, held in check by fear of Valori power, but now they saw that the Valori could be beaten, and more importantly, they saw what the Valori truly were: murderers of children. Became the rallying cry of a dozen rebellions. The Kellogg's broke their chains and slaughtered their Valori masters. The Vren seized control of 3 major shipyards and delivered them to human forces. The Visani, the oldest of the slave species, launched a coordinated uprising across 17 worlds in 6 months. The Dominion lost more territory to internal rebellion than it lost to human invasion in 2 years. High Arbiter Thiessen watched his empire crumble from his palace on the Valori homeworld. Each day brought new reports of disaster fleets, destroyed worlds, lost client species defecting, and always, the humans advancing. His advisors urged him to flee. There are neutral systems where you could seek asylum, Krell told him. The consciousness collective might. No, Thiessen interrupted. High Arbiter, please. The humans are only 3 systems away. Within a month, they will be here. Thiessen turned to face his aide. I am the High Arbiter of the Valori Dominion. I will not run from primitives and their pet slaves. If they want me, let them come and take me. They will kill you, Krell whispered. Perhaps, Thiessen replied, but at least I will die with dignity. He returned to gazing at the stars. Leave me. Krell left alone in his chambers. Thiessen reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The humans had sent a message to all Valori forces. Surrender is no longer an option. You started this war when you murdered our civilians. You continued it when you refused to stop. You have made your choice. Now you will live with the consequences, or more accurately, you will not live at all. Below the message was a number 17,400,000, the current Valori death count, and below that, another number 600,000, the amount remaining until the debt was paid. Thiessen stared at the numbers for a long time. 600,000 more Valori deaths. That was less than 1% of the Valori population, an acceptable loss, really, in any normal war, but this was not a normal war. The humans would not stop at 600,000. They would take exactly what they were owed. No more, no less, and then, perhaps, they would stop. Perhaps Thiessen had studied humans long enough to know that their rage did not cool easily, even if they reached their number. Even if they declared the debt paid, the Dominion was finished. The client species would never submit again. The other galactic powers would never respect Valori authority again. Everything Thiessen's ancestors had built over 12,000 years was gone. Destroyed by his own arrogance, he had wanted to teach the humans a lesson instead. They had taught him something: never wake the sleeping. Predator never threatened the species that had spent 1,000,000 years learning to kill everything around it, never declare war on humanity. But it was far too late for such lessons now. All that remained was the reckoning. The war ended not with a final battle, but with a broadcast. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the ruins of the Valori capital city. The once magnificent towers now nothing but rubble and ash. While cameras from every major species in the galaxy recorded the scene behind her, human soldiers guarded a platform where the surviving Valori leadership knelt in chains, and in the center of that platform, his ceremonial robes torn and dirty, knelt High Arbiter Thyssen Verkathons, the most powerful being in the Orion. Spur, now a prisoner awaiting judgment, Chun walked slowly to the platform. Her boots crunching on broken glass and shattered stone, she stopped in front of Thyssen and looked down at him. "Do you know why you are still alive?" She escaped. Thyssen said nothing. His 4 eyes, once proud and commanding, stared at the ground. "You are alive because we wanted witnesses," Chun continued. "We wanted the galaxy to see what happens to those who harm humanity. We wanted everyone to understand." She turned to face the cameras. Hundreds of billions of beings across 1,000 worlds watched as this human woman, this farmer's daughter from a colony world, prepared to speak. 2 years and 3 months ago, the Valori Dominion murdered 18 million innocent humans on the colony world of Kepler 442b. She began, her voice clear and strong. "They did this because we refused to be slaves. They did this because we laughed at their demands. They did this because they believed we were weak, because they believed we would bow." She paused. They were wrong. Images began appearing on screens across the galaxy. Images of the war's aftermath. Valori worlds in ruins, Valori fleets destroyed, Valori soldiers dead by the millions. As of today, the Valori Dominion has suffered exactly 18 million casualties, Chun announced. "The debt is paid. The balance is restored. The war is over." Murmurs rippled through the watching crowds on 1,000 worlds. Some had expected the humans to continue, to wipe out the Valori entirely. Others had expected mercy, some form of reconciliation. What they got was neither. "But do not mistake balance for forgiveness," Chun continued. "The Valori murdered our children, and we have taken blood for blood. That is justice, not vengeance. There is a difference." She turned back to Thyssen. "High Arbiter, you will live the rest of your days in a prison cell. You will watch as your empire dissolves, as the species you enslaved take their freedom, as everything you built crumbles to dust. That is your punishment, not death, but life, long life. Watching everything you loved disappear." Thyssen finally raised his head. His 4 eyes met Chun's too. "You are monsters," he whispered. Chun smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Yes, we are, but we are monsters you created. Remember that in your cell in the long years ahead. Remember that all of this, every death, every destroyed world, every shattered dream, all of it is the consequence of your choice to murder 18 million innocents." She turned back to the cameras. "Now, I will speak to the rest of the galaxy." The broadcast shifted, showing Chun in full frame, the ruins of the Valori capital behind her. Humanity did not want this war. We came to the stars seeking knowledge, friendship, adventure. We wanted to explore, to learn, to grow. We extended our hand in peace to every species we met. Her expression hardened. The Valori slapped that hand away. "They murdered our people, our families, our children, and they expected us to submit. They did not understand what we are." She stepped forward. "So let me explain, so that no species ever makes this mistake again." The images on screens across the galaxy changed, showing Earth, blue and green and beautiful. We evolved on a death world. Our planet is covered in predators, disasters, diseases, poisons, and we survived them all. We did not just survive, we conquered. We stood at the top of our food chain, not because we were the biggest or the fastest or the strongest, but because we refused to stop, we refused to quit, we refused to die. The images shifted again, showing human history wars, plagues, famines, natural disasters, and always humans surviving, rebuilding, continuing every challenge our world threw at us. We overcame every predator that hunted us. We learned to hunt in return. Every disease that killed us, we found cures. Every enemy that threatened us, we defeated. This is who we are. This is what we do. We endure. We adapt. We win. Chun's voice rose. We do not want war. We want peace. We want friendship. We want to build beautiful things together with the other species of this galaxy. We will trade with you. We will learn from you. We will share our knowledge and our art and our dreams. Her voice dropped to something cold and quiet. But hear me now. And understand, if you harm our people, if you threaten our worlds, if you kill our children, we will come for you. We will not negotiate. We will not forgive. We will not stop until the debt is paid. She pointed at the ruins around her. This is what remains of the greatest empire the Orion Spur has ever known. 12,000 years of Valori dominance ended in just over 2 years. Because they made the mistake of thinking we were weak. Chung looked directly into the cameras. We are not weak. We are the most dangerous species this galaxy has ever produced. We are kind because we choose to be kind. We are peaceful because we choose peace. But if you force us to war, you will discover what a death world species truly means. She took a deep breath. The Valori learned this lesson too late. Do not make their mistake. Be our friends. Be our allies. Be our partners in building something wonderful among the stars. We have so much we could create together. Her final words echoed across 1,000 worlds. Just do not ever make us your enemies, because we will show you no mercy. We will grant you no quarter. We will pursue you to the ends of the universe and beyond. We are humanity. We are the sleeping giant, the monster in the dark, the species that learned to kill before it learned to speak. She smiled, and for just a moment, she looked like someone's grandmother rather than a war hero. But mostly, we are just people who want to live in peace, so let us have peace. And we will be the best friends you have ever known. The broadcast ended 300 years later. The Galactic Archives contained a single entry under Humanity, Class 12 Death World Species. Status: Friendly, Threat Assessment, Existential, Recommended Contact Protocol, Extreme Courtesy. Do not provoke. Do not threaten. Do not harm. If engaged in conflict, immediate surrender is advised. Additional note: humans respond positively to gifts of food, cultural exchange, and what they call friendship. This approach is strongly recommended over alternatives and below that. Written in a shaky hand by some anonymous archivist. They are actually quite nice once you get to know them. Just do not make them angry. Humanity returned to the stars as explorers rather than warriors. They built wonders and made friends and created art that would be celebrated for millennia, but no species ever forgot. The lesson of the Valorithi sleeping giant had gone back to sleep, and no one was ever foolish enough to wake it again.